Dumelang, welcome to Face the Nation. My name is Clement Manyatela. It's great to have you with us here on SABC News. We're watching closely this evening developments in Israel following that missile attack by Iran. This is the second direct attack on Israel by Iran just this year. The Israeli Defense Force has promised this evening that there will be retribution for this attack. So if anything develops, we will bring you up to speed. But on the show tonight, the community of Lusikisiki is in fear this evening following a tragic and brutal attack on a single family where 18 people were murdered over the weekend. The police top brass descended on that community today, promising to catch those who were responsible for this heinous crime. In fact, the police say they've taken in one person for questioning. But what is being done to ensure safety for the community of Lusikisiki? The Community Safety MEC in the Eastern Cape, Xolile Ngata, will speak to us tonight. Also on the show, the Judicial Service Commission says it's going ahead with judicial interviews on Monday without Dr John Hlophe following a court ruling preventing him from sitting on the JSC. And remember, that's pending a review application of Parliament's decision to deploy Hlophe to the JSC. We'll speak to the DA's Glenys Breitenbach and the MK Party's Mzwanele Manyi. And then later, should the Justice Minister Simelane resign? She has already appeared before Parliament's Justice Committee. She has explained herself to the President. She's also appeared before the Integrity Commission of the ANC. So have her explanations been unsatisfactory on that loan she received from a man accused of being part of the looting of VBS Bank? Well, the ANC's Veterans League President, Snuki Zikalala, will speak to us. But first, my comment. Now, something tragic happened in the country over the weekend in Lusikisiki in the Eastern Cape, where 18 people were killed at a go, all of them related in one way or the other. These relatives were attending a family gathering and criminals came and opened fire. Police are now trying to figure out the motive. We understand that one person has been taken in for questioning. Here's what the police had to say earlier today.
The person of interest, we are not going to arrest him. It's already in our possession. We have the person, is being questioned as we speak. But the rest of whoever he was with, those are the ones that we know. But at the moment, as I said, the person is not arrested. We are just questioning and we know the rest where to go.
So those that are responsible for this heinous crime are still out there? And those who are related to this family that has been affected and the community of Lusikisiki are living in fear. They don't know what to expect next. Here's one of them who spoke to one of our reporters on the SABC this week.
This is really traumatizing to us because my brother's actually lost his daughter now, recently lost his son. Now in April, we were burying his son. And now this. So we were still trying to recover from the loss of his son, and then now we come and lose his only daughter to this tragic. At the moment, we don't have the slightest idea as to what could have led to this tragic incident.
Okubuhlungu kakhulu apha nilahlekelwe bo auntie, bo sister bam, babafowethu.
What is more painful is that I lost my aunt, my sister, and my brother in this incident. In August last year, we were in the same situation where we lost our sister like this.
So there are many people in Lusikisiki this evening that are feeling unsafe, especially because they don't even know where this attack came from and what the motive is. But the police earlier today promised that they will do everything possible to protect that community.
Minister earlier said we have deployed extra boots on the ground here in the form of extra TRT. And he also indicated they are not going to leave the area. So they will be here working in the community, dealing with those incidents of that you report of gunfire. The community had problem with the station commander. Yes, we changed him. We have a new station commander now, who's just over 6 months, I think. And we also brought the POP in this area. We brought in FCS, which deals with the gender-based violence in this area. So for stabilization of what currently is happening, the current members of TRT that are here, they will stay in the area to stabilize and make sure there is stability in the area.
We really have to be honest about the crime levels in this country and the brazenness with which these crimes are committed. It's actually quite shocking. And I worry that we have become so desensitized to the brutality of crime in this country. We're not just experiencing crime, but we're experiencing it in its most brutal form. And yes, we're going to get outraged. That's what we always do. We're good at that. We get outraged, and then a few weeks later we move on. Until the next time when, not if, but until the next time when one of us becomes a victim. And the sad thing with this crime in Lusikisiki is that it happened in a rural area, and policing is not that strong in far-flung communities. And yes, some of them have police stations, but often community members complain about the ineffectiveness of the police in those communities. So the question we're asking you tonight is, what measures do you think can be put in place to address crime specifically in rural areas? What measures do you think can be put in place to also just improve overall safety? What do you think needs to be done to deal with rural safety? And how can police, the government, and even us as communities deal with the issue of crime? What do you think needs to be intensified to deal with this scourge? You can send us a WhatsApp voice note right now on 078-459-1897. Remember to tell us your name and surname and where you are sending that voice note from, and please keep them at 30 seconds. Alternatively, you can send us an X on @FaceTheNation SABC. All right, let's start with a conversation with the Eastern Cape Transport and Community Safety MEC, Xolile Nqatha, who joins us now via Teams. MEC Nqatha, thank you so much for making time for us on Face the Nation this evening. As we speak to you, the people who have committed this heinous crime are still out there. What progress have the police made in following the leads and getting closer to those that are responsible for this crime?
Good evening, Clement, and to your viewers. And thank you for the opportunity. And once again, our message of condolences to the families of the deceased. And we've been in the area, and I'm sure the National Commissioner has indicated, that SABC, both national and the province, have deployed experts, including forensic experts and detectives, to conduct the investigation, and collected evidence at the scene, including cartridges and some material to do DNA and all that. And the police are currently following persons of interest, and one person at around 3. The police have been busy interviewing the person. And the National Commission, I'm sure at the appropriate time, will make the announcement. We're quite confident that a breakthrough is imminent, but we want the police to be given an opportunity. Yeah. It is really a sad situation, and we have been busy as a provincial government in the province, and in particular in the area of Lusikisiki as one of our crime hotspots, guided by a provincial safety strategy, whose 6 pillars, I would mention only the 2 pillars, which is about community participation to bring about active citizenry in the whole fight against crime, and bringing about awareness, and also to ensure that our approach against crime is preventative, and that the work of the police, including operations, are more intelligence-driven. And there is still a long way to go, but we have been, registering some successes, including increasing the high levels of communities where now they report cases of sexual offenses. And where we have reduced even incidents of ukutwala, which were quite prevalent in the area.
Okay.
And therefore, we take that the increase in the reporting of these violations is a result of people being aware of their rights and see when their rights are being violated. And we are anchoring now on this community participation so that the community can come forward. And we have provided a safety mechanism through a hotline so that people can report cases without having to identify their identities.
Is this, was this an isolated incident? Are these types of attacks common in and around Lusikisiki?
Not at all. There's been incidents, and there's been some massacres in the area of Kaweha and in the areas of Matole. And in all those areas, police have been successfully made arrests, and some people are behind the bars as a result of such incidents, which are planned, motivated by quite a number of reasons in those areas. That is why I emphasize the point that we want to build on the intelligence capacity. Hence, we welcome the support of senior officers from the national SABs to strengthen intelligence so that we prevent these incidents from happening.
Yeah.
And so that the capacity to profile criminals which are known is built such that we can monitor them and police can strike on them before they commit another crime.
Yeah.
Because the criminals are not falling from the streets. They belong to communities, they belong to households. People know. That is why we think that collaboration between the police and the communities is quite vital in order for us to win the war.
Is there an understanding, MEC, either from the police or even the community members as to the motive of this attack? Who would want these relatives dead in such a horrific manner? Because we also understand that there was a shooting involving members of the same family a year ago where police were able to, and I wonder if the police, in fact, were able to resolve that crime.
Well, as Clement has indicated that in this terrible incident, investigations are still underway. I wouldn't want to venture into speculating, but we sort of establish in other incidents that have occurred that sometimes it is a result of turf battles in some of the drug cartels, in some instances relating to conflict among families. On this one, we have yet to establish the reasons behind this massacre.
So, MEC, we have a community in Lusikisiki this evening that's feeling unsafe. They're, in fact, fearing as they're about to go to bed. What assurances are you making to them as those in authority about their safety?
We have secured a deployment in the area, let alone that the station itself was elevated to a brigadier police station, and which meant that resources had to be added, both in terms of additional police and in terms of vehicles, which were added over the period. And now the TRT has also been deployed to monitor the situation. They are going to be monitoring the situation even post the funeral. They are going to remain in the area to monitor the situation. And also the senior officers that were deployed, they have taken the dockets of unresolved, murder cases that people have referred to when I was there yesterday. And yesterday a directive was given already that those dockets must be retrieved by the police, and they must look at them, the current investigators, to see the follow-ups that must be made. The fears of the community is understandable, and because lack of consequences for wrongdoing, you see people roaming around. One resident was saying, we are fearful because if I come forward and I become a witness, and I appear at court as a state witness, the following day I'll be killed. But another one, community member, was able to give another practical example to say, my sister was murdered last year. We cooperated with the police, we secured a conviction of a life sentence. The reality of a trust deficit, it's something that we're the first one to admit. That is why we have provided this hotline. That is why we must ensure that even rotten elements, within SABS are rooted out. Okay. And also the levels of professionalism are sort of, strengthened.
All right. Community Safety MEC Xolile Ngata, thank you so much for joining us on Face the Nation this evening. After the break, we'll have a conversation about the JSC and their decision to continue with their judicial interviews on Monday without Dr. John Hlophe. Remember, he was interdicted from sitting on the JSC pending a review of the decision by the National Assembly to deploy him to this organization. We'll speak to the MK party's Mzwanele Manyi and the DA's Glenys Breitenberg. Stay with us here on Face the Nation. Welcome back. The Judicial Service Commission has decided to proceed with its October sitting despite the threat of legal action and demonstrations from the Umkhonto weSizwe party. The JSC held an urgent virtual meeting after receiving a letter from the MK party's lawyers requesting a postponement of the sitting. Remember, this comes after a full bench of the Western Cape High Court granted an interim interdict halting Dr. John Hlophe from participating in the JSC sitting pending a review of his designation. Let's bring in now the DA MP, Advocate Glenys Breitenberg, and then later on I'm going to bring in the MK party's Mzwanele Manyi, who is the chief whip of the MK party in Parliament. Glenys, I'll start with you. Thank you so much for making time for us this evening. So you won the first battle in court last week when you managed to interdict Dr. John Hlophe from taking up his seat on the JSC, pending this application to review Parliament's decision to deploy him to the organization. Today, the JSC has decided that it's going ahead with these judicial interviews on Monday without him, despite the threat of court action, and we'll hear from the MK party later on. This is what you essentially wanted as the DA, right, for proceedings to continue on Monday?
That's absolutely, yes. Good evening, and thank you. That's absolutely what we wanted. We want the JSC to continue sitting in an undisrupted fashion to get on with its very important business of appointing judges. And we wanted Dr. Hlophe to be interdicted from being present there because we hold the view that he should not be on the JSC, and we hold the view that the decision of the National Assembly was an irrational one, which is the reason for the main action of reviewing that decision. The interdict is interim relief, and we're very pleased to have won that battle. Mm-hmm.
So now the focus in court will be on Parliament's decision and whether or not it's rational, right? So based on this interdict judgment, in fact, when I was looking at it, the court seemed to believe that there's a general discretion that the National Assembly should have exercised as it decides which MPs should be on the JSC and veto some people. Is that what you agree with as the Democratic Alliance?
Yes, we absolutely agree. The established tradition is that political parties nominate a member to serve on the JSC, and that goes to the National Assembly for its approval. And generally speaking, the approval is granted. But it's not a rubber stamping exercise. It's an administrative decision that the National Assembly is taking, and it's required to apply its mind to each member, and it's required to act rationally with regards to each member. This kind of situation has never arisen before. Mm-hmm. It's quite sad that it in fact has arisen, but nevertheless here we are. Yeah. And the National Assembly is required to seriously and reasonably consider each candidate and not rubber stamp a list that is placed before it. Yeah. The National Assembly has been criticised in the past for doing precisely that, but it appears we haven't learned our lesson.
Yeah, but isn't this going to create a problem, Glenys, where the majority party is given too much power? So that gives the majority party in Parliament too much power to select who they want, and they can veto others. And that's power that can be abused, as you have seen in the past.
Well, that's why we have the option of a review in courts. If the power is abused, then of course it's up to the party who feels aggrieved to take the matter to court and review that decision. There isn't really a party in Parliament at the moment who has sufficient majority to just bully its way through any lists. So, conceivably that probably couldn't happen right now. But nevertheless, it's an administrative decision that must be rationally and reasonably considered, and we don't believe that it was.
So in my understanding, there's an acceptance here that until the rules and the constitution are amended to clearly define the situation, the established rules and practices of Parliament that political parties could nominate their own representatives to the JSC has to be respected. So is this then more about Dr. Hlophe's character and not so much about the constitution or the rules of Parliament, because those don't bar him from being deployed to the JSC?
No, the rules do not bar him from, do not bar any member from going to the JSC. But as I said, you need to apply your mind to each candidate, and each candidate has to be a fit and proper person to serve on the JSC. It's a specific body created by the Constitution to do a specific job. And Dr. Hlophe is unfortunately the only judge who has been impeached by the National Assembly after being found guilty of gross misconduct by the JSC, who then wants to come back to Parliament and sit on the JSC. I don't think anyone ever envisaged such a bizarre situation occurring. It's absolutely unimaginably bizarre. So those are the rules, those are the established practice. It doesn't excuse the National Assembly from its duty to act reasonably and rationally.
Yeah, so obviously there's going to be a code of conduct that Dr. Hlophe himself will also be subjected to. I think there are over 20 or so commissioners there. The chairperson of the JSC can also intervene in cases where maybe he's not, conducting himself in line with the code of conduct. It's not like he's going to be a law unto himself on his own. Why don't you push for a code of conduct for all commissioners, maybe to change if you're worried about how he may behave in the JSC, where you've got mechanisms maybe to recall those commissioners who do not uphold the terms of the code?
Commissioners can be recalled at any time. The parties nominate commissioners and the parties can recall them and replace them. That's not an issue. It's also not about how Dr. Hlophe will behave when he's at the JSC. It's about the fact of him being at the JSC. He was the Judge President of the Western Cape High Court. He was found guilty of gross misconduct, conduct so unbecoming that he was removed by the National Assembly from the bench. That is the ultimate disgrace. There is no space for somebody of that caliber to sit on the JSC. It is a body that does a very important job. It chooses the judges that will be nominated for appointment by the president. It chooses the judges that will be appointed to the other courts. It is a very serious job. It's a difficult job. It requires a lot of preparation and a lot of input. And it's a job that requires a serious approach. Dr. Hlophe has demonstrated quite ably that he's not fit to sit there.
And I mean, that's him as a judge, when those findings were made. But this is now him as a politician. Let me ask you this. Because we also want to deal with a scenario where we don't come back here, why are you as the DA not trying to push for, say, constitutional changes or changes to the legislation that would require that people deployed to Parliament be fit and proper and have integrity, so that you avoid scenarios like this in the future, or scenarios where parties don't deploy people with questionable characters and integrity, people maybe facing criminal charges, people who have made racist statements, people who have been impeached, because many of you parties in Parliament are actually guilty of this, of putting up people in Parliament that actually, some of them don't have integrity. Some of them are still facing criminal charges. In this case, some of them have been impeached.
Some stole the land.
What was that last comment?
Sorry, that's Mzwanele Manyi in studio saying some stole the
tell him
land.
to wait his turn. You see, already
Wait
behaving
your
like
turn,
you shouldn't
Mr.
be
Manyi.
anywhere in the public space.
Yeah, go ahead.
Who says we're not considering that kind of amendment to legislation? Of course we are. We're looking very seriously at amendments to the Constitution to preclude people like Dr. Hlophe and Ms. Mkhwebane from becoming members of Parliament, and certainly for sitting on the JSC. I mean, MK is, a walking example of people who are really, not fit and proper.
Okay, and I'm imagining. I mean, one of the things that people have been saying, reflecting on these developments, is that this is more of a political fight that's finding itself in the courts. How do you respond to something like that? Because
that's honestly that's such a sad and short-sighted, myopic kind of approach to this problem. The fact of the matter is that we sit here with the unique situation of a man who was the judge president of a division of the High Court of this country. He behaved in such a shocking, abysmal fashion that he was found guilty of gross misconduct by the Judicial Conduct Committee and later by the JSC itself. The National Assembly found that his behavior was so far beyond the pale that they impeached him and removed him from that office. And then a political party sends him to Parliament as an MP. That's already, something that's seriously questionable. And then has the gall to nominate him to sit on that very body that removed him. It's a disgrace.
Yeah. Let me, as we wrap up, ask you this, and this is in the interest of just consistency. There's a DA member, for instance, of the provincial legislature in the Northwest, Henriette van Heesteen, who has been struck off the roll and suspended by the Legal Practice Council, who has been serving as a lawmaker in the Northwest legislature. In fact, the producers have been trying to get the DA to come and tell us why this is the case, given the view that you hold as the Democratic Alliance on Dr. John Hlophe. And my understanding is that that matter is being investigated by the Federal Legal Commission. I mean, when you hold a view like that about Dr. John Hlophe, do you accept that then it's quite weird to have the DA have someone who's barred still being allowed to function in the Northwest as a deployee of the party?
As you correctly pointed out, the matter is now with the Federal Legal Commission, which I coincidentally chair. And as soon as the DA was placed in possession of this information, we started the investigation. And so the outcome of the investigation will be made known in due course. We're also a party that believes in due process, which is what we're busy with now. But if there's a problem with Mrs. van Heesteen, then certainly that matter will be dealt with, as we deal with all the matters when they come to our attention, quite publicly, quite openly.
Glenys Breitenberg, I appreciate your time on Face the Nation this evening.
Thank you.
All right, let's now bring in the MK Party's chief whip, Mzwanele Manyi, who was busy making comments there in the background. This is now your time.
Before we even start, there's a clip by FW de Klerk where he was being put under pressure by his national party that he has made too many concessions in CODESA. One of the things that he was pointing out, he said, who suggested that there must be JSC? We did. So I'm beginning to think now that was this JSC a national party idea in the first instance to be able to do the kinds of things that they're doing now? Because de Klerk was very clear in this clip. I'll find it, I'll send it to you. There's a clip doing rounds, I'll find it. I'm sure people that are listening can send it to you. I asked them to do that, but otherwise I'll find it and send it to you. So I'm beginning to think that this JSC was a tool used by the apartheid architects to make sure that all the proper African judges that are there, that are not towing the line, must be dealt with. I'm beginning to think that that has been the purpose more than other things.
When you look at how the JSC has been doing its work in post-democratic South Africa, is that an argument that you could still make?
I'm reminded when this is happening because, you see, this discussion should not be happening if one looks at how this JSC has been put together. This JSC has been put together very meticulously. You know, there's nothing that has been left to chance. It's almost like, in our time with a car that had a carburetor. You know, a carburetor, you have to have a certain amount of air, certain amount of petrol here just to make sure that the car is running properly. It's exactly that with the JSC. You know, they have got the chair, they've got somebody from the president of the Supreme Court of Appeal, the JPs nominate their person, the judges nominate their person, the attorneys nominate their person, the advocates. It's fine-tuned.
Academia and politicians, though.
Now, when it comes to National Assembly, as an example, when it comes to National Assembly, the fine-tuning gets even more. And I can tell you why I think it's the way it is. There's 6 members that are there for the National Assembly. And that Section 178 says at least 50% of those, at least 3 of those, must be from opposition party. It says at least. So if you had more than that, there would be no problem. In fact, we could have had 100% of that, there would be no problem. I think the reason for that, it's because part of that 23 members, you also have a cabinet minister who is going to be obviously ruling party. And then you also have 4 of the people that are nominated by the president. Now, clearly, there will be, to manage those kinds of biases. That's why you have this kind of a thing that says, okay, just to control that, now let's have no less than 50% at least. Now, with the situation that we have, where you've removed Judge Hlophe in the mix, you have less than what the Constitution envisaged should have. The mischief that the Constitution sought to deal with is being undermined. So we can't have a situation like this. And by the way, with the even the response that we saw from the JSC to say that no, he's a member, but he's just not participating, so business as usual. I think that misses the point by a mile. It misses the point by a mile.
Help me understand why you think it's missing the point. Because the JSC does say a member can be absent for legitimate reasons. In this case, I mean, it is a legitimate reason because the court says...
It's not legitimate.
We bar him in the interim pending the review application.
No, it's not legitimate. This is a forced removal. It's a forced removal. It's almost like, it's actually almost fraudulent, if you like. It's almost like, some of these ANC branches, for instance, in the northern suburbs, that fail to correct. Then they go around asking for people to please just come, just sign the register. You don't have to be in the meeting. This is what you are doing to Judge Hlophe. You are saying he must just sign the register and bugger off, take decisions, and he's implicated in those decisions because he signed the register. It's a fraudulent arrangement that the JSC has agreed to. It's just totally fraudulent, that arrangement. And also, what is also important that they seem to miss is that the reason it's also this fine balance of so many, that has got a very sensitive reason to create balance and all of that. But importantly, the absence of a person has got a major impact, and here's the impact. Before you get appointed to be a judge, there's also an internal threshold that you must first achieve before you get appointed. And I think the threshold is about 12 or so. So if you don't get 12 votes minimum, you don't become a judge. That's why it's so important. Now imagine if a judge has lost being a judge purely because he was maybe 11, maybe Judge Hlophe would have voted for this person, and this person now can make a case to say, I was denied to be a judge by a structure that failed to be constituted as dictated to by the Constitution.
Or somebody else, a judge, could say that, well, part of the JSC process, there was somebody here. Like, let's take Judge Goliath, for instance, who was the deputy to Dr. John Hlophe. If she is part of the people being interviewed to take over as the Western Cape judge president, I mean, what stops her from saying, why must this person be part of this process when him and I have this kind of context and history where we have argued in the past? So how fair could he be in the voting process after my interview?
Interestingly, of all the people on the land, the judges have got a special dispensation when it comes to things like that. that they are beyond reproach and all of those things and all of that. So when it comes to judges, that rule applies different, doesn't apply like it applies on other people. So a judge like that will never raise a thing like that to somebody who's been 30 years in the judiciary. He knows that the kind of ethics that are there are beyond reproach. The reason Judge Hlophe was impeached, it was just purely political, because we can have a discussion on it now. It's a simple thing. He said, Stembelegnina. There's nothing in that Stembelegnina that suggests anything that is corrupt. They imputed their own meaning on this thing purely because they wanted to remove him. You can't say Stembelegnina and then that is enough to say the man is unethical. I mean, what nonsense is this?
But what I'm saying is, he had a dispute with his deputy when he was the judge president in the Western Cape High Court.
Yeah.
What stops that deputy from saying, why must Dr. John Hlophe be part of a process where he is part of voting when it's very clear that he never liked me?
No, what happens is that people have to declare all kinds of conflict. If that kind of a situation is such that it creates any level of conflict, Dr. Hlophe would be the first to know that there is that situation.
He must recuse himself.
That is a legitimate situation.
Would he recuse himself as well if the JSC is now deliberating on his own challenge of the decision of the JSC to find him guilty of gross misconduct? Because he's still challenging that.
Yeah, well, that is if that is the discussion on that for that. But this is not what we're dealing with here. Well, this thing is not about Judge Hlophe. This is about candidates that are being interviewed and all of that. It's got nothing to do with him. That discussion happened in the various disciplinary processes, in court processes and all of that. So you can't just create, come and create some obfuscation about that.
No, I'm just looking ahead. I'm saying in that case, would he have to recuse himself?
In the disciplinary process of sorts,
if they discuss it.
As long as they give him a right of reply.
Yeah. Okay. What's your next move as the MK party? Because now the JSC, as you saw in your letter that they sent to you guys, they're saying we are continuing on Monday. Are you still considering legal action to appeal that interim order?
MK party is a party that believes in the rule of law. There is nothing that the JSC has done to convince us otherwise. In fact, coming to this show now, before this, we just had a proper briefing, and we've got fresh mandate, or the lawyers have been given a fresh mandate, a clear mandate to say they must go and interdict that sitting because of the reasons I've just explained here, because that sitting continues to be unconstitutional, because that sitting does not pass the test in terms of it being constitutionally put together, as it were. If you do not have Judge Hlophe, the threshold is not met. And the reason he is not there, I mean, it's a different thing to somebody who got a car accident or is sick. This is not car accident or sick. He's there, he's ready, he's able, he's willing, he wants to come. And
well, the court says don't go.
And they're using a wrong reason for that. So we're challenging all of that. So we can't have a situation that, that's not final. They even say interim, interdict. Even themselves, they know that they cannot have any finality. This is why the most rational thing to do at this point is to postpone these things. What is this big rush? Or what we can do, given that this is of national importance, why can't we have a situation where that review application is brought forward? They must discuss it tomorrow. And then we have a clear position on it, and then we can move.
The tough thing, though, if in that review application they find against Dr. Hlophe, he's going to want to appeal it. And then that takes forever. Then it ends up in the Constitutional Court. The JSC is not going to function until the matter is...
You mean you want to do a Kampepe now, who had exactly this kind of thinking, and when President Zuma was unfairly incarcerated, she had exactly this kind of thinking that, no, Zuma, he's going to postpone, he's going to argue, we haven't got time for appeals here. We have to deal with him. This is a kind of a legal system that we should have.
She said, Zuma, come and give us your side of the story, and Jacob Zuma decided not to be part of that process.
She said these are extraordinary circumstances. And she said special rules, the normal rules will not apply. That's what she said.
But she gave him the opportunity to come and present his case, and he refused. In fact, he chose to just write a letter attacking the judges.
That case should not have been there in the first place. Should have been in the High Court, in the trial court. the rules of the commission were very clear about what happens in this case.
Why didn't he go make that point in the Constitutional Court?
This is what the lawyers had made, that point that Zondo himself should have taken President Zuma to a trial court. The rules of the commission demanded that it does that. He decided to ignore all of that.
Why didn't he make that case in the Constitutional Court? Why didn't he go and say, you guys are being unfair? This matter should not be here. He chose not to be part of that process.
No, but lawyers got to be bigger than people. You can't say because you said that we've got a vengeful legal process here. We don't. We have a rational process that must be beyond reproach and that can be personal.
Okay, let's talk about the consequences of how the court is going. Obviously, the court hasn't dealt with the merits of the case.
Yes.
For now, they've just said pending the Part B application.
Yeah, in fact, even before you get there, I think let's be clear that even going into that constitutional court was abuse of process, because this process has been a democratic process, a political process that was in Parliament. The DA lost the vote democratically in the National Assembly. I was there. They lost it. And now, because they can't lose, they decide to use the Western Cape High Court as sort of an appeal structure. If that court had any sense, they should have rejected this, because now what do we have? We have an encroachment. We have a court that is busy interfering in National Assembly processes.
Yeah.
There's no dispute in the Assembly. The dispute was resolved by a vote. So once that was done, that was done. Why is the court encroaching on National Assembly matters?
But the decisions of the National Assembly must still be rational. Otherwise, you would have a majority party in the National Assembly just willy-nilly accepting and passing decisions.
What was irrational about this? I think the first thing that...
I'm just saying... No, I'm not saying this is not irrational. In fact, I do think that it's weird that you are challenging someone sitting on the JSC when the law and the Constitution doesn't say so. The point I'm trying to make to you is there are decisions of the National Assembly that could be passed by the majority, where the ANC, and the ANC has done it in the past, where they abuse their majority. Those decisions must still be rational, which is why
of course,
the DA once took Jacob Zuma to court when he fired Pravin Gordhan, even though it's Jacob Zuma's prerogative as president to hire and fire. And the court said, you can't just willy-nilly do this. You must still give reasons for that.
You see, the courts should be the masters of determining this. But the courts have failed to do this. Let me give an example. You see, if you look at the president, for instance, the president, if you go to Section 89 of the Constitution, when you remove the president, when the president is removed for gross violation of the Constitution and all of the things similar to what Judge Hlophe is being accused of, when you get red-carded for those things and you found guilty on those things, not only you get removed from being a president in the first instance, but you lose your various benefits as a president. Importantly, that Section 89, subsection 2 is very clear that you do not qualify to hold any public office. So this is very clear for the president. At the same time, when that clause was being made, it was known that there is something called an impeachment of a judge. But the drafters of the Constitution did not do a Section 89 on the judges for a particular reason. I don't know what was the reason. Now, today, we are now trying to rewrite the Constitution in loco, and we're deciding to cut and paste and do all kinds of funny things, and yet the Constitution is clear that the kind of standard that they want to put on the judges is only applicable to the president, and it's in the Constitution. Now you want to do a markup plan here. It's just not, it's not right. Now, the Western Cape High Court should have been the first to say, what nonsense is this? And kick this thing out. For them to entertain it, it means they are willing to sacrifice the Constitution.
Yeah. Mzwanele, Manyi, they're going to kill me because I'm out of time. Thank you so much for making time for us. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. So we've been asking you the question tonight about the measures that must be put in place to address crime in rural areas and improve overall safety. We will be playing you some of those WhatsApp voice notes just before we wrap up the show. Your tweets have also come through. Let's look at this now. The Ministry of Justice released a statement earlier today noting media reports that Action SA has laid criminal charges against Minister Thembi Simelane. The statement emphasizes that the ministry believes that the laying of criminal charges is the appropriate course of action whenever they are suspicious of unlawful conduct. In fact, Action SA opened a corruption case against Simelane at the Polokwane police station in Limpopo. Meanwhile, the ANC Veterans League has been saying that people must have a conscience and make the right decisions in the interest of the organization. Let's bring in the ANC Veterans League president now, Snuki Zikalala. Mr. Zikalala, thank you so much for making time for us. What are you expecting Minister Thembi Simelane to do? She has appeared before Parliament's Justice Committee. She gave her explanation there. She explained herself to the president by sending him the relevant documents, including that loan agreement, and I imagine maybe some bank statements. She's also appeared before the Integrity Commission. Were her explanations not satisfactory?
Well, we don't know. We haven't received the report. We understand that she appeared in front of the Integrity Commission last week. And so we have not received any report. The NEC is going to sit on the 28th and 29th, and then it will receive all the reports. Based on what the Integrity Commission has said, we expect that actually the problem that we're having currently is that the constitution of the ANC says that a person can only step aside once he has been criminally charged. Now, that's the biggest problem that we're facing as the Veterans League, because we are saying that if a person is not criminally charged, there are allegations, there are serious allegations, it means that that person will remain in that position. But what about the integrity of the organization itself? And so what about the dignity of the organization itself? We are saying that immediately if comrades know that there are serious allegations against them, it's a compassionate plea. We are pleading with them that they should step aside, clear their names for the sake of the organization. And of course, if they are found not guilty, they'll come back in their same position. Because we are being hammered by society saying that we are not serious about dealing with VBS issues. We're not serious about state capture. And as the organization, we are serious, but we're hampered by the constitution itself, which says that a person can only step aside if that person is criminally charged. That is the biggest problem in the constitution. And
I mean, one of the reasons, to see how the ANC is being affected even by issues like this, look at their electoral performance in this year's elections. That's going to require, though, that members of the ANC and leaders appeal to their conscience. And let's be honest, Mr. Zikalala, that's quite a big ask for ANC members. They often want to be pushed to resign, forced to step aside. They never really appeal to their conscience. Do they even know how to locate it, many of the leaders in the party?
Well, me personally, I just came back from Sinn Féin. They had their Congress over the weekend, and they were very annoyed that these comrades are still in senior positions and they are still calling themselves members of the ANC. And what about their conscience? And so it means that these comrades want to see the ANC going down. And so we are saying that we appeal to their conscience, but immediately if there are serious allegations, they know very well that it's not possible for them to win those cases. Let them step down for the sake of the organization, because the organization is bigger than an individual. And so it is a problem, but that problem can only be addressed by the next conference of the ANC in 2026.
What constitutional changes
that can be done?
What constitutional changes do you want to see at that conference, and as far as the step-aside rule is concerned, so that it makes it more clearer and people don't have to wait to be officially charged?
Well, the constitutional changes, what we want to see is that immediately, if there are allegations, serious allegations against any individual, it does not matter who it is, that person must step down and clear his or her cases, and of course he'll come back. There is one comrade currently who had stepped down. Now that comrade, I understand that there are no cases against him. He wants to come back. These comrades are still young. If I look at Comrade Simelane, she's so young. She's so vulnerable. And I'm saying to myself, why did she get herself into this? But we are saying that let her exercise her constitutional duty. Let her say, look, I'm still young. and I can still clear my name, and I can come back if I know very well that I have done nothing wrong in terms of VBS.
All right.
Because for the sake of the organization.
ANC Veterans League President Snuki Zikalala, I appreciate your time this evening on Face the Nation. All right, let's go to your tweets as we wrap up the show. In response to the question we've been asking you around the measures that need to be put in place to fight crime in rural areas and improve overall safety. Siabulela says, good evening, Clement, and to your viewers. We need to have police patrol on horses assigned to almost every village with local leaders, have expeditious communication devices to report and get the necessary assistance. We also need to do away with solving inhumane acts. Ngobuntu. Nare says, good evening, and you and the viewers, Community Policing Forum in collaboration with the SAPS can improve safety in our rural areas. That's Matume in Begersdorp village. Mfunuyetwa says we should adopt and spread the resolution by Mkwanazi that station commanders must have monthly meetings with the communities and report on matters they have resolved and empower community leaders and civilians so that criminals are eliminated early. Lastly, from Mogale, who says the Minister of Police must urgently strengthen the capacity of all CPFs, especially in rural areas without private security. He should also strengthen the Crime Intelligence Division of the SAPS as well as civilian oversight in his office. Thank you so much for your tweets. We've also asked you to send us your WhatsApp voice notes. Here's what some of you have had to say.
Hello Clement, this is Likwadube from Cholocho, Mvundlana suburb in Zimbabwe. What needs to be done? It is strict gun control measures in South Africa. Guns are easily accessible. Anyone can get a gun just like plucking a fruit from a tree. Thank you.
Hi Clement, this is Malcolm from Nelspruit to Mumbela. I'll say they must put cameras up on going into the towns and out of the towns. So, and even around the center of the town, so they can see what car was driving around that time or not. Cool, bye.
Sam Alekot. All right, thank you so much for your voice notes and your tweets, and thanks for watching the Tuesday edition of Face the Nation. We'll be back with you on Thursday at 8 p.m. Have a good evening. Cheers.